How's it going, everybody? Welcome to this episode live of the AVB Podcast. I am your host, AJ Vandenberg. For those of you just checking in for the first time, you are watching the AVB Podcast. Like I said, you can find us here on Facebook or also by going to the AVB.com, which will take you to our YouTube channel. Today, I am sitting with my guest. Let me bring him up. Mr. John Law. How's it going, John?
Hello. How you doing?
Good, good. Just for yourself and for the audience who might be watching, as you well know, we're playing with Skype here, so, dealing with internet and live stuff and all of that as we go, so hopefully the audience will bear with us. But I wanted to talk to you today, because as I said to you as we were chatting yesterday, I don't remember how I found you in Facebook land. I think we have a mutual friend of some sort, but you're an arts and culture writer for the Niagara Falls Review. You
Right.
were born and raised in Windsor. You're from Windsor originally, and you spend your life in journalism, correct?
Essentially, yeah. Born and raised Windsor, St. Clair College, as were you, I understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, as I told you, this week is my actually 30th anniversary with the Niagara Falls Review. So
That's incredible.
been a while.
So talk to me a little bit about your history, bud. Like, so I know you said you're from Windsor, but were you born and raised here?
Yeah, yeah. I was in Windsor most of my life. A little brief detour in Tilbury and Bell River and all that, but born and raised in Windsor until I had to find a job. Again, the Windsor Star wasn't hiring at the time, so had to move out to Orangeville and work there
Oh,
for a
okay.
year and a half.
Nice. Talk to me about your experience at St. Clair College going into journalism. How did like what was that even? Why did you even pick that as a way to get moving? And I'll have to apologize to the audience as we're talking here, as the screens keep jumping around as we're talking. So
Yeah, Skype is an adventure.
yeah, absolutely.
I, you know, I, the cliche thing is to say it was a calling. Journalism called out to me, and it was inevitable, my fate and all that. But as I was growing up, I realized the only thing I was actually semi good at was writing. Whether it was short stories or like little things to keep me amused. And I was always fascinated with newspapers, like even as a newspapers front to back, before like the comics sometimes, but there was always a newspaper in my hands. So
Right.
by the time high school was coming to an end and, you got to make some kind of choice, well, I'll see where it takes me. And so it was 3 years at St. Clair.
What what was it? What was it about journalism? Because I like for me, I went into journalism wanting to be a creative writer more than a journalist, and my experience in journalism sort of like it taught me about the business and how things move and operate. But it also sort of taught me that wasn't the thing that I wanted to do. As much as I love sort of these kind of conversation and the journalistic mindset and how you sort of like explore stories, that the lifestyle of journalism wasn't necessarily for me. What was it about it that you sort of decided to go with?
Well, from the start, I wanted to be an arts and culture writer. That's basically the only aspect of journalism I was interested in. I totally respect the guys who get their hands dirty into the hard news and the exposés and investigative stuff. They have, I'm in awe of them sometimes, but that was, I always wanted to write about the entertainers, the performers and musicians that I loved. I mean, I grew up a pop culture, all I ever wanted to write about. And for the most part, I've been lucky enough to do that my whole career.
It's funny because that was the stuff that I got sort of tacked into pretty early on, obviously. As
Yeah.
well, what were you a performer or an entertainer yourself at all?
No, as many have me, I've I can't play a note to save my life, especially after a bad review. It's like, well, what have you ever acted? Well, no, but I don't. There's no real response to it, but.
Well, see,
But
what's fascinating to me is like it's that side of it that almost pushed me to go and explore all of that stuff myself. Like it's
Hmm.
the idea that like how can you talk about something if you don't know what it is that you're talking about, right?
Right, right. But you watch it enough, you listen to it enough, and you love it enough. You
Yeah.
know what's worth writing about and what's worth sharing, and what's, and in some cases, in some cases with reviews, what's worth telling people to see. I mean, it's you become immersed in pop culture. That basically becomes your specialty, for better or for worse.
Yeah, for sure. Talk to me about talk to me about your journey through entertainment reporting because you've done a lot of sort of community reporting as well as sort of like talk about the bigger shows and that as well, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. You know, when back 30, God, it's hard to say 30 something years ago. I
Right.
can't believe it, but 30 something years ago, there were a lot more
Yeah.
newspapers, there were a lot more jobs, there was a lot more entertainment. So, you grab onto it and you do your best with it. And then gradually, as the years have gone by and the industry's changed, it's getting tougher and tougher to only write about arts and culture. I mean, it's
Definitely.
heartbreaking to watch the coverage decline like it has in the last few years.
It's actually a great topic because that sort of starts to get us around the sort of billboarded topic that we were going to talk about. Walk me through what you've seen, the changes that you've seen inside the newspaper industry specifically over the 30 years that you've been involved with it. I know it's a
way
big question, right?
way less, yeah, shockingly less staff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's conceivable to me to compare what this industry was 30 years ago to what I'm seeing now. And I'll give you a great example. I mean, my first job was in the Orangeville Banner. 3 staff members. I worked once every 3 weekends. 32 years later, at the Niagara Falls newspaper that used to have 20 something people in the newsroom is now 3 staff members
Wow.
once every 3 weekends. It feels like I've just
That's
done a complete circle.
that's insane because yeah, like I remember those days. I did some stints at like some of the smaller papers like the Amherstburg Echoes and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
I think that's the wrong name, but anyway, but like that kind of level of newspaper. And yeah, you're right. Like it was always these like these big offices with very few people in them because there wasn't enough money for it to run around, and now that's sort of translated into what we think of as like big journalism, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
talk to me about some of the constraints that brings to you as a reporter.
Well, I mean, you don't have the resources we used to. We don't have the editors we used to copy edit our stuff, look over our stuff. We don't have the staff. It's frustrating. Every newspaper guy will tell you the staff to cover our communities like we want to. And but I guess you have to let go of what you want the longer you're in this industry. It's not ideal, but survive right now.
What does that mean for you guys in like real world decisions though? Like when you say you don't have the resources to cover the things that you want to, talk me through because one of the things that I think happens in our sort of culture these days is people, we're living in, and I don't want to go down the necessarily the political roads of this, but people talk about fake news a lot, and people throw around a lot of examples of quote unquote fake news, and I think unless you actually see the way journalism works and you sort of understand the ins and outs of how stories get made and developed and reported on, I think it becomes really easy to confuse a lack of ability with an intentional misdirection, if that makes any sense. Maybe you can comment on that a little bit.
Well, as far you're asking, like, what constitutes to us, or what's
Well, no.
the
Mostly, I think what I'd like to do is have you walk through like what producing a story looks like now versus what I think people think in their heads it looks like. I think for a lot of people, they think a journalist day starts by going into a room where an editor tells you, okay, this is what you're going to go report on today, and I think that's the very first thing that they're wrong on.
yeah. Well, Well, a lot of the fundamentals that have always been there are still applied today, only harder now because, there's just less people to do it. You don't have the
Right.
time to spend on a lot of stuff. But watching how my colleagues work at the Standard and the Review and the Tribune, I mean, they verify, they still fact checked, they still do the grunt work to make sure everything's correct. And when people, brush it off as fake news. Oh, this is just propaganda. No, it's not. This isn't some dude in his garage cranking out a column spewing what's at the top of his head. I mean, that's more power to him. Great. They have their role too, but this is still important hard work that that these people are doing. And
Yeah.
you call it fake news if you want. I see it firsthand. There's nothing fake about it. It's important work, especially right now.
Okay, so talk to me. That's something that's said about everybody, right?
Mhm.
Everybody's essential, essential to this day.
Yeah,
So,
more
so
than us.
yeah. So talk to me about what it is that you think is so important about journalism today, and where the perception of those things are kind of affecting the work that you do.
Well, I mean, you don't have far to look. I mean, in our local communities, you, the newspaper is, for better or for worse, it's where you go for the information that affects your life in your specific community. I mean, small towns, towns like us, Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, mid-sized towns like that. I mean, this is you trust your newspaper to give you the correct information times like this. If you don't trust us, I mean, that's up to you. We're filtering the information, and it's tons of information out there. We're filtering it as best we can to help you people make decisions that have ramifications out there. I mean, you're talking your health,
Yeah.
you're talking your livelihoods. We don't take that responsibility lightly at all.
100%. Talk to me about some of the things that have changed for you through all of this, because, like you said, you're primarily an entertainment reporter, working in an era where there's almost no entertainment to report on right now, other than all of the live entertainment that's been going on. What are your days looking like these days?
Well, I'm telling you, it is a grind some days. Like you just said, I'm an entertainment writer with no entertainment, but at the same time, I don't want to walk away from it. I mean, these people are hurting right now. The arts and culture in Niagara is hurting right now, and I still want to spotlight them. I want to give them stories. I want to let people know they're still there. They're still trying to work. They're still trying to create stuff, and that means a lot of stories on their live streaming stuff. Any special projects they got going on. Fortunately, it means a lot of bad news stories too, with
Right.
all the theater closings and cancellations and whatnot. So it's the word unprecedented's been used a little too much lately, but it really is.
It
Like,
really
I
is, right?
can't believe what's happened here.
Yeah, it's not the first time that a virus like this has kind of gone through the world, but it's the first time that the world is sort of reacting to it the way it has, and I think like that's part of the problem too, right? There's a lot of people are still trying to get their heads wrapped around like why it is the world is reacting the way it is, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know if we know the answer to that still. I mean,
Mm.
we've been through viruses before. We've been through some serious stuff before. But I've never seen everything shut down for
Right.
months like this. I mean, what are we going to remember about 2020? There's going to be no sitting in your house. There's no
I mean,
concert, no
yeah, yeah.
sports,
I mean,
nothing.
yeah. I don't know. That's an interesting question, but what are you going to remember of
Yeah.
2020? I'm a guy that tends to you know with fair enough criticism, but I tend to try to grab the positive angle on these things as much as I can. And I know for me,
Hmm.
I've been working harder, or not harder, but I've been working more than I've been working a lot lately just because there's specific projects that have been coming to me because of the situation. But I also realize that I'm in a much different position than most people.
Right. Yeah.
I can't imagine like it would be a nightmare for me to sort of if I thought that I was just trapped in my house and couldn't do anything to sort of get the energy out. I can imagine where that's making people, go a little bit stir crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so they're finding outlets with doing stuff online, doing concerts online. Even the Shaw Festival is rehearsing through Zoom right now. I mean, they're still to a season.
Right.
I'm just dreading that news coming down the pike soon, like what happened with Stratford yesterday. But
Oh, I didn't hear the news. What was announced? Are they officially shut down for a while or?
yeah, season's been shut down. So
Oof.
Shaw Festival is still, as of right now, the shows are canceled till June 30th. Uh, we'll see what happens.
Well, and in that same vein, I just saw a post. I haven't had a chance to verify it, but I saw a post scroll through just before we went on. Apparently, Post Media has announced they're shutting down some media outlets in Winnipeg and in the Windsor Essex region. So, of course,
Yeah.
everybody's speculating that it's going to be the Windsor Star, but it's probably going to be one of the smaller ones, right?
Yeah, I didn't see specifically which ones they were shutting down. A lot of yeah, this is going to be going on all year. I'm afraid a lot of these smaller papers might not pull through this. And when it starts hitting the bigger papers, that's when it's really going to get scary.
Well, it's this is a thing that's been coming for quite a long time, right? And I
Right.
mean, you'll have some people screaming that it's well deserved, but I think a lot of the examples of the well deserved bad mainstream media are actually good examples of how the media got sort of decimated over the years.
Right. And my response to those people is always, you know what? You won't appreciate your local newspaper until one day you wake up and it's gone
Right.
and it's not there anymore for you. So,
Yeah, I'm forever trapped in. I completely understand the sentiment that you're going with, and I agree with it to a great extent. But again, I'm the idiot that always tries to take the positive note. And I start to wonder as the money's been flowing away from newspapers for so long anyway, and things have started to move to this online journalism. I mean, for lack of a better term, I'm the same as all the YouTube things that anybody else shares and says, hey, pay attention to this. I'm at the exact same level as that. But I wonder, do you think there's any hope in sort of finding a way to sift through all of the folks like me that are on YouTube, putting out the information that they think is important, whether it has validity or not? I'm trying to dance around some of this.
there's no question. Some of you are doing great work. I mean, you're doing really important stuff. You're telling good stories. You're doing what journalists should do. My beef is whether they know it or not, are spreading false stories, or spreading ill-informed stories, just spreading stuff that does more harm than good.
Right.
Uh, they think they're sticking it to the mainstream media with this stuff, but they don't understand the pollution they're causing when they do this stuff. And I'll give you an example. You probably saw it on my Facebook page. I was really just steaming mad over this. Um, People, maybe about a week ago, people were sharing that thing about the Florida beaches being opened again,
Right.
and they attached a photo. This is the same photo to a story that someone in LA did about the LA
Right.
beaches being open, and it was just what the mainstream media is doing here. The same crowds at two different beaches. They're lying to you. Why are you people like taking this? Wake up. It took me all of 2 minutes to go online, verify that this guy was a photographer for Gannett. He That photo was used for a story on the beaches in Jacksonville. Some other outlet in LA couldn't send someone down to the beach to take a photo of themselves. photo,
Stock
and they
photo.
didn't explain it to people that it was two different, that it was the same thing.
Yeah.
And then they're saying once you disprove that, then it's like, well, this photo's kind of fake. Look how many people are there. So
Oh,
okay, so
see,
now
that's
you've
funny.
given up that battle. Now you're going to
Yeah.
move on to something else.
I haven't seen it move to that level, but I was gonna put up a similar sort of example where there's a CBS story talking about the hospitals in New York, and some editor flipping through a ton of B-roll saw a shot of a hospital, so he grabbed it and threw it in because it was B-roll, and it turns out it's the same shot as from a hospital in Italy, and now that's an example of fake news. And it's and you can try to explain to people as much as you want how this working process works, and it's like it's way easier for it to be an overtired, overworked editor just making quick choices that are throwing this stuff up than it would be from some top-down conspiracy theory that's out to do nothing but sell you a specific story about why they're trying to take over the world or whatever it leads up to. That's the part I can never get to, is the why any of this would happen.
Yeah, yeah. We're always in their back pockets as well.
Right.
We're always in the back pockets of these people somehow. That's they like clarity as well. It's ridiculous. Some days it really agitates me. I mean, you just stop.
Well, you know what? Maybe this is a good opportunity, because one of the things that gets thrown around when you're talking about journalism at this level is the word bias. And it's an important word. I don't know about you, but I remember taking journalism ethics when I was at St. Clair. And that was the main thing that they told us about. The main thing that they talked about to us about is what journalistic bias was, and how, what the ethical way was to sort of like to maneuver your way between your personal feelings on a topic and the information that's coming through to you. And I think that there's two problems. Number one, journalism changed to go from a fact-based, like just here's the information, it went to more entertainment. So there's that mix there, and I don't think the general public was either trained or well enough aware to be able to sort of sift through the differences between the fact-based journalism and the opinion-based, like, entertainment journalism side of it. But also, like, I've sort of lost where I was going with it in my own head, but you understand where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your perspective on it.
Skype is acting up here
sorry,
again.
Man. Are you hearing me? Okay. So just give me your perspective on the bias issue.
Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting thing because, in addition to what you just said, we also hear from a lot of people that are saying the journalists are failing us by sticking to this neutrality thing, by sticking to this always get both sides thing. I mean,
that's interesting. Yeah.
I hate to bring up Trump. It's almost like you can't avoid it. But they're saying, why are we covering? I'm talking about my colleagues in the States.
Yeah.
I'll never interview. It's like, why are they covering him like this is normal? Why are they covering him like this was any other president? This is so clearly not normal anymore. Why are we sticking to the way we before? This what it is now is so completely bizarre and different that we have to cover this differently. And in a lot of cases, that means accepting what he says. Just because he says it doesn't mean we have to accept it as true. It's almost a failure of our job to take him at face value right now.
It's such a weird question because it really is. Like, I'm a guy who started from a base of freedom of speech, right? Like, you should have the right to say, like, I came from a place I remember as a kid, the idea that, I may not agree with what you say, but I'll die for your right to say it or whatever, right? And yeah, it's such a difficult question now because the idea, first of all, freedom of speech, people get very confused. It's a government thing, not a Facebook taking your post down has nothing to do with freedom of speech.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting when you look at it. The only thing that I can come up to, as I've tried to sort of sift through the minutia of it, is I try to compare it to any other time when the public's access to information changed to the degree that it did with the internet revolution. So I look back to like the Gutenberg press, and I start looking, I try to find, not that this stuff is readily available, but I become very, very interested in how the revolutionary world that came out of the invention of the Gutenberg press compares to the revolution in the world that is coming out of the internet age, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody. Can you hear me, AJ?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the Skype is acting
Yes.
up. It must be lunchtime. But yeah, well, let's face it. Everybody on Facebook is a doctor now, or they're an expert in whatever video they just watched on YouTube 2 minutes earlier.
Right.
I mean, it's almost it's information overload.
100%.
And when you got everybody throwing every little tidbit that pops into their head out, it's time to filter all of that. I mean, it can be overwhelming, and you just want to shut it off after a while.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's that idea of the gatekeeper thing, right? Like I come from I'm an internet kid, so I came up around, I paid attention to Anonymous, I paid attention to all of that stuff as I was coming up, and it's the more and more you look at it, you start I shake my head because it's the way information and facts get spun around to narrate this other sort of level of story. Is, I don't know, it's fascinating to me. It's sad to me in a lot of levels, but it's mostly just fascinating to me because I don't know how you sort of explain to people who are convinced that there's this other thing that's happening. I don't know how you talk to them in a way
Right.
that sort of brings them into reality. I mean, I don't want to sound condescending when I say it like that, but that's kind of that's how I feel about it, right?
to do that without it like breaking down into a complete whatever is the hard part. But I know what you're saying. I see it. I'm seeing it today. There's some clip of a doctor who I don't know who this guy is, but he's dressed as a doctor, so he
Right.
must be an expert, right? Saying something about ease up the quarantine. Let's start getting people out, and people are going, see a doctor's saying
Right.
this now. And like two friend just disproved everything that guy said with another video, and
Right.
it's like they just go back and forth. And you, where's the actual truth when you have two? They are completely in the right with their own research. You know what I mean?
It's so funny because like when we don't have a crisis
Hmm.
that we all have to deal with, we spend a lot of time not giving a shit about anybody but ourselves. Right?
Yeah.
Like most of our days are sort of absorbed in the things that we do, whoever we are, and for right or wrong, good or bad, that's kind of who humans are. And when we get faced with these a crisis like this, it's, I don't know, I just see more of that in some people, but I take a lot of heart in the fact that you see so much of the other side of it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's a lot of
Um,
people doing good work right now.
they are doing good work, and but the work right now during COVID is um, it, it's as strange as obviously the word everybody throws in, but we're trying to do this job while we're also dealing with our own anxieties and bad days and just days you wonder where this is all going, or are we going to have a job in a month? I don't know whether we're going to have jobs in a month the way things are going. So you're trying to do your job, filter everything out while you're also got this mountain of stress and anxiety hanging over your head. Uh, it's again unprecedented, strange freaking time.
What's the best lesson you're taking out of all of this, John?
Um, maybe not. I don't know. And to an extent, I was already doing this before this hit, but to not lose my mind over every single thing anymore. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yep.
There used it was things would agitate me, and I'd be like banging on the keyboard, like I gotta tell everybody how pissed off I am about this.
Yep.
That seems forever ago. You know what
How
I mean?
many how many messages have you typed out completely and then erased?
My problem was I didn't erase a lot of them.
Oh yeah, see, I'm in the erasing them stage now. It's I'm finally got to the point where like I've typed out some, and when I write paragraphs, man, and so yeah, and I mean half of them are misspelled and all the other garbage. But
Yeah,
I'm finally to the point where I get all of the like rah out, and then I just delete it and
yeah,
go. This is
yeah,
there's yet to be an look, I like to be fun with words. I like to consider myself to be somewhat witty, but there's yet been a time when my wit has changed somebody's mind, and I'm not really like I love being entertaining. I love being funny, but mostly I'm not going to waste my time trying to convince somebody something that they're not going to change their mind on. I'm not. That's not what I'm trying to do anymore.
right, right. And sometimes I realize that only after an hour of arguing with them, but yeah,
That's it.
at least it was entertaining.
That's it for sure. So talk to me about the future. What are things looking? I know everything's uncertain for everybody right now, but how are things looking for you? What are the changes that have come about for you that you're putting into place now? That sort of thing.
Well, the entire staff is basically working from home. We have two or three people in the office, but we're all doing our jobs in our basement, which it looks like you are too
Yeah,
from the
absolutely.
background.
Yeah.
Uh, I used to do maybe 70% of my interviews over the phone. Now it's probably 99% of them.
Right.
Um, you know, it's it gets times. I mean, I'm just stuck in this basement. I got a blanket on my lap because I don't get much heat down here,
I got.
and
I'm not. Hang on. That's a
and
heating blanket because it's so cold down here, and I have no heat down
it
here.
is. There you go. See, see, you know what I'm
A hundred
talking about.
percent, man. 100%.
And there are days I'm wondering, like, is this what the jobs come to, working like this? But
Is this real
you
life
got to look
now?
at the big picture. I mean, everybody's doing the same thing. They're busting their ass. My coworkers are calling, doctors and EMS people and MP, everybody. They're still doing the work. They're just
Yeah,
doing it a little differently and a little more weird, but it's getting done.
absolutely.
I guess that's what they do. That's what they chose to do. And when a curve gets thrown at you like this, then you know they answer it.
Absolutely. All right, John. Well, we are dealing with some major Skype issues. I don't think the video's been. I don't think the video's been in sync once this entire conversation. So, for those of
Really.
you who are hanging out and have sat through all of this, thank you so much. If there are any questions, go ahead and throw them up on the chat. There, we'll be able to grab them. But for the most part, if there's questions for John, if you're watching this after we've gone live and you have questions, throw them out. We'll pass them along. But John, I want to thank you for your time with us today.
All right, AJ.
All right, thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. And if you just stay on the line here, I'll talk to you as soon as we end as soon as we end the live stream. I'll be right back with you. All right, folks. Thanks for hanging out with this for this episode of the AVB podcast, our live stream. I know we've been dealing with some technical difficulties, but we're doing some things to work on that. Hopefully, we'll get it better as we're going. If there are guests or questions or anything like that that you happen to come up with, feel free to reach out with us. We're going to continue on with these live streams, hopefully once a week. Tapping in with some folks who have some understanding in the world that's going on right now. So go ahead and click on the like, the share buttons, and go ahead and subscribe. Head on over to the YouTube channel. If you subscribe there, we're getting awfully close to that 1,000 number that will allow us to monetize. Hopefully, can't wait to get those $20 checks once a year. So head on over there and hit subscribe. We will talk to you folks next time. See you.